Hello, hello. My name's Jack, Blac.JACC, and welcome to Blac.Studios. I have a question though. First question is, how do you anticipate change? How do you respond to change? Do you find yourself being more reactive or proactive? Let's get into this a bit more. So, this is one of my favorite books, if not probably my favorite book. And it's by Dr. Spencer Johnson. And he basically discusses areas around how different people respond to change, discussing and focusing on four main characters. One being Hem, who is someone who doesn't necessarily respond to change well and often finds himself crippled by change. The second is Haw, someone who would like to anticipate change, someone who would like to be able to respond to change sooner but finds himself stuck in situations whereby change is having a greater impact on them. The second is Sniff and Scurry. Well, that's the third and fourth. And Sniff and Scurry are those who anticipate change and often react to change in quite a swift manner, focusing in on how they can be ready, be prepared, and ultimately stay ahead of the curve. My question is, which one are you? Who do you react? How do you respond to change? And who resonates most with you? So we'll get into this a bit more, but the reason why this is my favorite book in particular is because it reflects many different seasons. Who Moved My Cheese ultimately utilizes or uses cheese as a metaphor to life's lessons. Cheese could be a job, cheese could be a relationship, cheese could be a marriage. Cheese can consist of a range of different things in which you're probably finding it hard to adapt to, but being able to ensure that you can move in the right direction. So for me, I think at this season in my life, I'm someone that is trying to anticipate change while staying ahead of the curve. But we'll get into this a bit more. So, in the beginning, it ultimately discusses the four characters. So Sniff and Scurry are known as the mice, whereas Hem and Haw are known as quote unquote the little people. And in short, it reflects how little people, humans, respond to change in comparison to perhaps the likes of animals. Now, albeit some responded to that in a very hectic and toxic way, I think it's a true representation of how we respond to change in our lives. Often not being able to respond in the right ways or respond fast enough and allowing change to overwhelm us at different points. So in the beginning, they all start off on an equal playing field, whereby they're on their journey to chasing cheese. They're on their journey to ensuring that they find different cheese at different station points. So in particular, it focuses on the book Cheese Station C, whereby they wake up in the morning, they gather their boots together, and they run around a maze. And as they're running around a maze, typically what they'd like to do is stop off at different cheese stations where they find cheese. Now, both Hem and Haw and Sniff and Scurry all find themselves at the same cheese station, which is Cheese Station C. And what happens is they're in two different points of the cheese station. Now, Hem and Haw, like many of us, they take off their boots, they take off all their running gear, and they sit down and relax, and they immerse themselves in their cheese. Now, albeit that's not necessarily wrong, you find yourself at a place of comfort, whereas Sniff and Scurry, they take their boots off, but they don't just pack them away. They keep them around their neck. Why? Because in case anything changes, they're ready to anticipate change and move sooner. Now, as they're doing this, the cheese day by day is running out. And I mean, I think for me, the reason why this is crucial is because it might represent money. It might represent your job, your business. So as the cheese is running out, what happens is they find themselves at a point where they're questioning why the cheese is running out. This is specifically Hem and Haw. And they see themselves not necessarily wanting to let this cheese go and having a level of attachment to the cheese. Sniff and Scurry, as mentioned, are ready to go on a journey in case this cheese does run out. Now, as the cheese is running out, Hem and Haw notice this. They return back the following day and see that the cheese is ultimately gone. Now, whilst they've recognized the cheese is gone and they're sitting and pondering on what could have happened to the cheese and all the ways in which they went wrong and all the things that they should have done with the cheese, Sniff and Scurry have left. They're on their journey. They're on their route to finding new cheese, ensuring that what they can ultimately do is have a similar experience, but not being so bound by the cheese. Are you bound by your cheese? That's a question. Hem and Haw sit in their emotional distraught and they don't necessarily know how to respond. Hem in particular is someone who is quite, I would say, the negative one out of both Hem and Haw. Not being able to react quick enough, often blaming Haw or Sniff and Scurry for the fact that they might have finished the cheese. And Haw is looking at this from a different angle. His mind is awoken. He wakes up one morning and he almost laughs at himself. So throughout this book, we kind of follow through on the character of Haw, who goes on this journey by himself and actually has to neglect his friend Hem because his friend Hem is, again, negative, quite pessimistic, and doesn't want to respond in the nicest ways. I guess this might reflect many people in our lives. This might reflect a friend, a family member, a business partner who doesn't necessarily want to move with the times. I mean, when I think back to this, I think back to, I believe it's Kodak. And I think they had an opportunity whereby they could have moved with what digitalization was happening within the markets, and they didn't respond well enough. And it put them at the brunt of the market. And I think this is a reflection of how we respond to change in our lives. So Haw immerses himself on this journey. And as he does this, oftentimes he's laughing at himself and finding that where he went wrong is being so bound, being so stagnant, being so complacent, being so comfortable in his mess, in his cheese. And it talks about the life lessons. And what typically happens is as he's among this journey within the maze, he's at different chapters. So he's being able to look back or reflect on himself and really understand exactly where he went wrong and try and correct that. There are times whereby he feels lonely, so he feels like going back to Hem. Why? Because it's a comfortable thing to do. He feels as though it's like home. It's something he knows. It's something he's used to. It's something that would make him feel at ease. But why I like this book in particular is because it almost challenges you to figure out ways or seasons in your life and things that are probably keeping you bound, things that are keeping you chained, things that are stopping you from going on your journey to move. And I'm at a season in my life whereby moving is very much critical. For example, I mean, this is an episode that I've never done before. This is an episode by myself. And this is very uncomfortable, but I think being able to move, and I'm a believer, and as a believer of Jesus Christ, I like to understand that I don't have all the answers. I don't have it figured out. I have to move. I have to be able to listen and move without necessarily knowing what. So operating blindly, but by faith more than anything. And I think it's a true reflection of Haw's character in this particular book, just because he goes into a season of reflection. He goes into a season of being able to focus in on where he went wrong, often making those corrections, but he continuously moves despite how he feels. I'll actually read a part of the book with you and a lesson that was very much critical that I found to be of benefit. So I'm going to just find something here, anywhere really. Okay. So this is Hor. It says, Hor thought about going back again to Chi Station C to see if he could find Hem, assuming that Hem could find his way back here. If he found Hem, he thought he might be able to show him how to get out of the predicament. But Hor realized that he had already tried to get his friend to change. Hem had to find his own way beyond his comforts and past fears. No one else could do it for him or talk to him about it. But somehow he had to take advantage of how he saw himself changing. And I think more than anything, at different points and seasons of our lives, that's a true reflection of friends, family, businesses, careers, relationships, whereby we might decide to go back. We might choose or think that going back is probably the right move, but you often shoot yourself in the foot and never allow yourself to adjust, change as well as you could. And I think, in short, just to wrap this up, the way I would utilize this in my life is at different points. I remember when I first read this book, I was 18, 19. I'm now 29. And I think it's a true reflection of how I've adjusted to change in my life in different seasons, having to go from university, masters, starting a business, actually leaving that business just because it wasn't at a point where it was growing anymore, and then jumping into the corporate world for the first time. It's been a very whirlwind of a journey, and I think oftentimes we could be so bound by what we know and what we believe or what we've seen that we don't move in the direction at which life has taken us. So I guess my question to you is, which character do you represent most, and which character would you like to emulate in the next season of your life? It will bring gilet. The tag is on it because it is new. A classic staple piece.